Kuzmic in the 5S Daily Press starts right now.
Rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. And we'll rally from the hillside, we'll gather from the plain, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitor and up with the star. While we rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. Oh, we're springing to the call for 300,000 more, shouting the battle cry of freedom. And we'll fill the vacant ranks of our brothers gone before, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever.
There will not be a lot of jokes today because ha 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 700,000 people died.
Mr. Green, actually only 680,000 people died.
Yeah, it depends on how you count, you sniveling little ghoul. But recent estimates are between 680,000 and 800,000 total casualties, deadlier for Americans than the American Revolution, World War I, World War II, and Vietnam combined.
Mason Barber is going to tell us what activities the children are.
Mason and I am on the 5S Daily Press, and here is the sports report for today. When the soldiers have their free time, they write letters to their family to tell how they are doing. The soldiers also play sports like baseball and pitching, horseshoes. Reading is fun for them. They play football just by tackling. It is more like a big fight. During the Civil War, sports were very popular among the United States. Bare knuckle boxing was a popular sport. Original baseball was established during this time with over 30 different teams. Football was as we know, it began during this time. This quickly developed into the game we love today. These sports were just the start of what was to come in the future for the United States of America. Now back to you, Sarah.
Coming up, Caitlin's going to tell us what the weather is.
America, I'm Caitlin Mayer, and this is the 5S Daily Press, and this is the weather during the Civil War. On May 7, 1864, men experienced a heat stroke and exhaustion because the temperature was so hot. Because of the high temperature, dry grass and rainforest caught on fire. On May 15, 1864, it rained so much that mud was everywhere. When soldiers walked through the field, their shoes got stuck in the mud. Back to you, Sarah. Yes.
I'm going to share Lincoln's inauguration.
I'm here with the 5S Daily Press, and I'm going to tell you all about Lincoln's inauguration. Monday, March 4th, 1861, was a huge day for Abraham Lincoln and for America. That day, Abraham Lincoln and President James Buchanan left the Willard Hotel, which is near the White House. They left in a carriage bound for the Capitol. After 1 p.m., the Supreme Court made Abraham Lincoln the 16th president. What a great day for America. Can you tell me a little about the South Carolina secession?
Hi, I'm Michael, and today I'm going to be telling you about the South Carolina secession. In the 1860, in South Carolina, slaves outnumbered the whites. In December 1860, a secession convention declared South Carolina independent from the Union. During the months of January, February, and March, they surrounded Charleston Harbor with big, heavy cannons. The cannons prevented supplies to be brought into the fort. On April 11th, cannons opened fire on Fort Sumter. The shots started the Civil War.
Wow. It's pretty. Could you tell me about the Battle of Fort Sumter? I can't say that. I am here at Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor. South Carolina. I just witnessed the first shot of the Civil War here on April 12, 1861. U.S. Major Robert Anderson has taken charge of the fort following South Carolina's secession from the Union. On April 11th, I can't say his name. Burgart ordered Anderson to leave the fort. Anderson refused. Early the next morning, the Confederate soldiers fired on the fort. This is the start of the American Civil War.
The thought bubble. You'll notice from this map that not all the states that held slaves were part of the Confederacy. The border states of Kentucky, Missouri, Delaware, and Maryland allowed slavery and never left the United States. All of these border states were critical to the Union. Maryland was north of the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. Kentucky controlled the Ohio River. Missouri was the gateway to the West. Delaware actually wasn't that important. So none of that should be particularly controversial unless you're from Delaware. But the causes of the war, that's another story. The Civil War was about slavery. Actual historians will back me up on this, like David Goldfield, who wrote, "Both Northerners and Southerners recognized slavery as the immediate cause of the Civil War." Also, Lincoln said in his second inaugural address, 1/8 of the whole population were colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. These slaves constituted a peculiar and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was somehow the cause.
Hi, Evan. Can I know about the Battle of Bull Run?
Yes, my name is Evan. I'm going to be telling you about the Battle of Bull Run. President Lincoln ordered Union General Irving McDowell to attack Confederate forces stationed along Bull Run. The Union's plan was to take out the numbers of the Confederate forces to open a path to Richmond, the Confederate capital, and in the war. On the morning of July 21st, the two opposing generals planned to flank the enemy's left. The Confederate plan was failed because of lack of communications. Then the Union started using cannon fire against the Confederates. Next, the Confederates got reinforcements which outnumbered Union troops. In the result of the outnumbered Union, the Confederates secured the win of the Battle of Bull Run. Thank you for listening.
Back to you, Sarah.
Okay, I'm going to be sharing the military draft. This draft was called the Enrollment Act. For a variety of reasons, the states preferred this to enlist volunteers, those men being given bounties of at least $100 to join. For these reasons, the number of soldiers who fought as conscripted men were, in fact, fairly small. Racial and class divisions were sparkly revealed by the Act's operation. Finally, the Enrollment Act becomes official. Thanks for watching the 5S Daily Press and have a great day.
Freedom, and although he may be poor,
You were wrong. So spoiler alert, the Union won the war, which in a sense is unsurprising because they had massive advantages. For starters, they had many more people, approximately 22 million as compared to 9 million in the South, of whom 3.5 million were slaves and therefore unlikely to be sympathetic to the Southern cause. Also, the North manufactured more than 90% of all goods in America. Its factories turned out 17 times more textiles than the South, 30 times more shoes and boots, 13 times more iron, and 32 times more firearms. Plus, at the outbreak of the war, the North had 20,000 miles of railroad compared with the South's 10,000. This made it easier for the Union to move its army, which over the course of the war enlisted more than 2 million men compared with 900,000 for the Confederacy. Even Northern agriculture was more productive, taking greater advantage of mechanization than Southern farmers did. Really, the only advantage the South had was better military leaders, like most of the tactically famous generals of the Civil War, Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, Jeb Stuart, etc., were Southerners.
I'm Matt Brown with the 5S Daily Press. We have breaking news from the Monitor vs. Merrimack battle. Now we will go to our reporter Emily in the field.
Thank you, Matt. I hope everything is good at the station. Now I'm here with Adri, who just witnessed the battle of the two ships Monitor versus Merrimack. Can you tell us a little more about it?
The formerly built an ironclad called the USS Merrimack, and the Union took that as a threat, so the Union built an ironclad called the USS Monitor. On March 9, 1862, the two ironclads fought each other off the Virginia coast. Both ships could not sink each other because of the ironclads. The cannonballs would bounce off of the ships. It was still a victory for the North because they kept their blockade in place.
Now back to Matt in the station.
What are they doing for sports in the camps?
I'm going to tell you the sports report. The first boxing match was in 1860 and became popular in 1849 when Tom Hyer and Yankee Sullivan fought. At first, boxing was a self-defense course. Hyer's win was the first sports story ever wired over the telegraph to a newspaper. Soldiers wrote to their family at every opportunity. It was the only way to talk to their loved ones. During their free time, they played card games, reading, and pitching horseshoes. They also played team sports. Holidays were celebrated by feasts, horse racing, boxing, and many other contests. Back to you, Matt.
I'm with Emily, who is with the Battle of Shiloh. Can you tell me more about it?
Sure. The Battle of Shiloh had many more wounded and dead than at the Battle of Bull Run. It was the first time under fire for most of the soldiers. The South still pushed back one after another Union position. The North won at Shiloh, but both sides still paid a heavy price. Twice as many Americans died in this one battle as died in the entire American Revolution. Never again would people go sightseeing at the scene of a battle. What they saw would be too terrible.
Wow, that was really interesting. Now back to Adrian. Just witnessed the Battle of Antietam. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, hi, I'm Tom Nick, and I just witnessed the Battle of Antietam. It has brought tears to my eyes, and I'm going to tell you about it. It was the bloodiest day of the battle, one of the most bloodiest. This was also the U.S. fighting against the U.S., so people had to pick their sides. It was also a very sad day because many people had to choose a side whether to fight on. They say it was the bloodiest battle in history. Many lives were lost. The Battle of Antietam was the U.S. versus the U.S., North versus South. It was it was no one's very favorite, but no one really enjoys any battles anyway.
Wow, thanks for that story. Now back to Matt. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Stonewall Jackson. Thomas Jonathan Jackson was born on January 21st, 1824. When he was 2, his dad and sister died from typhoid fever. His mother remarried, so he got a stepfather. In 1831, Jackson's mom died from complications of childbirth. Stonewall lived the rest of his childhood with his dad's brothers. In 1842, he enrolled in the U.S. Military Academy in West Point, New York. In 1846, he graduated 17th out of 59 students and just in the nick of time to fight in the Mexican-American War. When he was there, he met Robert E. Lee. Jackson retired from military and started his civilian life. In 1853, he married Eleanor Junkin. In 1854, Eleanor died of childbirth. And in October 1857, he remarried Anne Morrison. Anne had a daughter, but tragically, the infant died less than a month of her childbirth. Then, in 1859, Jackson re-engaged in the military. Then 1862 came. Jackson had another daughter named Julia. Tragically, on May 2nd, 1863, Jackson accidentally got shot by a friendly fire from the 18th North Carolina Infantry Regiment. His last words were, "Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of trees." Now back to Matt in the station.
Thanks, Matt Brown, and I'm going to give you more information about Lincoln's 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment ended slavery in the United States, but the southern states rebelled this amendment. President Lincoln proposed the amendment on January 31st, 1865. The states ratified it on December 6, 1865. President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 had declared slaves free in the Confederate States while they were still in rebellion. This let the slaves go north and fight for their ultimate goal of freedom. The rest that I have for you today on the 5S Daily Press. Remember out there, stay civil.
Be a slave, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
Good evening, I'm Gemma Simington here reporting for 5S Daily Press.
Tonight we're talking to Max Faber, who is alongside Alexis Alexander. Out to you both.
I'm standing here with Alexis, who has just witnessed the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, the Emancipation was signed by Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863. It declared the freedom for slaves in 10 countries. It went through all the executive branches on July 1862. Lincoln changed the proclamation because the war was going badly in the North. And so the Congress passed the law freeing all the states who were slaves who came into the Union.
Thanks for that, Alexis. Now back to you in the state.
Wonderful up-to-date report, Lexus and Max. Now we are to Max and Braden, who have the latest and greatest news about Abe Lincoln. But first, let's see how General Lee surrendered lately. General Robert E. Lee has surrendered his 28,000 troops in the Civil War. Lee was forced to surrender when he did not meet up with the Army as planned, the Southern Army as planned, and as a result, it led to stumbling, no food, and no supplies in the backcountry of Virginia. Also, as he did not work, General Philip Sheridan beat him to the battlefield. This meant that 6,000 of his soldiers were in prison. After this happened, he knew he could not go on. He sent a message to Ulysses S. Grant of the willingness to surrender. They met up and came to the agreement that the Civil War finally ended. General Lee surrendered on April 9, 1861.
I'm standing here with Braden, and he's going to tell us about Abraham Lincoln.
Hello, I am Braden, and I'm friends with Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, when the war first started, chose not to assign troops to defend Fort Sumter. This is one of his bad decisions. And then once the war started, Abe called for 75 troops for the war. Abraham Lincoln later sent troops out to Bull Run, and he blockaded the South. And then deeper into the war, my friend Abe Lincoln gave a really good speech to the Gettysburg Address after the Battle of Gettysburg. He also issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which said that on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord, 1,863, all slaves in the Confederate States shall be free. He got really stressed from the war. One of the friends that he looked like a haggard with care weather beacon, which I do not know what that means. He also worked closely with General Ulysses S. Grant to make plans for the war.
Thank you. Now back
Sad scene, but I have found a survivor of the Battle of Gettysburg. Can you tell us more?
Sure. The Battle of Gettysburg began on July 1st, 1863, and ended on July 3rd, 1863. The battle changed many lives of people who lived in Gettysburg. The battle was fought because of the railroad system. It was one of history's most bloodiest battles. We should all know and remember this battle.
Thank you. Now back to
the United States. The
General.
first 3 days of July 1863 saw the Battle of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. This was General Lee's furthest major offensive in the North, and had he won the battle, it is likely that panic would have set in places like Philadelphia and maybe even New York. Actually, panic did overcome New York in draft riots that killed more than 100 people and only ended after troops from Gettysburg were called in. I'm not going to go into detail about either of these battles, but they shifted the tide of the war in favor of the North, although not enough to bring the war to a quick end. Confederate forces would never again threaten.
77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived
We can never forget what they did here.
Living brothers, have been dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here thus are so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause, for which they gave the last full measure of their devotion. That we gave here highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain. It is that this nation under God shall have new birth of freedom, and that of the people, by the people, for the people, no. Of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth.
I'm going to tell you about the Civil War, the weather during the Civil War. Some of the important points were during the war, the weather during the Civil War was influential. It shaped events during the most of the events during the Civil War. Some of the weather determined strategy as well as tactics on the battlefield. The weather colored the war for soldiers and civilians. The weather affected the war in many different ways. It helped with strategy, although it was not always easy, but the soldiers rather freeze than let us lose the war. The weather was horrible for the most part. The warm weather was only for like 3 months to 5 months, but the soldiers just kept pushing.
Braden, and he's going to tell us a little bit about William Sherman.
Hello, I'm Lieutenant Braden, and I served under General Sherman. My General William Sherman failed at our first battle, which is the Battle of Bull Run. After that, he was temporarily relieved of command. I served under him again in the Battle of Shiloh, and then we started our march to the sea, where we attacked farms in the city of Georgia and the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia. Including me, he took at least 1,000 troops.
Thank you. Now back to you in the station, Jim.
Now let's see what Max and Serena have for us. Out to you both.
I'm standing here and I have found Serena, who was on Sherman's side on his march to the sea. Please tell me more.
I was marching with Sherman when he told his men to destroy enemy values. The moment those words came out of his mouth, his men were off. They did this every city, and whenever you look back, all you see is ashes as well as dead animals. Right now, we are looking at the remains of Bennett Place. This is what happened with Atlanta and Savannah, if you were wondering.
Thank you. Now back to you in the station, Gemma.
My name is Max Faber, and I'm reporting to you from Fort Cedar, where President Lincoln has just been assassinated. Sadly, his last words were, "She won't think anything about it." The assassin shot Lincoln in the back of the head, point blank, in the ear. Booth seems to have jumped on stage and yelled, "Sic semper tu tyrannis," which means always two tyrants. Lincoln lived for a while, but died in a bed. The assassin escaped, but soldiers tracked him and shot him in the neck. Booth lived for 3 hours, but his last words were, "Tell my mother I died for my country." Now back to you in the station, Gemma.
Max, Ella, honest Abe, and Serena. That is sure some neat weather we've got coming up here soon. Good night, and I'm Gemma Simonton, reporting for 5S Daily Press, and see you back here tomorrow. And remember, at some time the smoke will lift when the war. Good night.
Watching the 5S Daily Press.
Rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. And we'll rally from the hillside till gathers from the plain, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys.
Lead anchors for the 5S Daily Press are Sarah, Matt, and Gemma.